I'm Lynn Geisinger, Chair of the RTD Board. I'll now call to order the Tuesday, January 9, 2024 special board meeting. We're convened as of 5:30 p.m. I respectfully ask everyone to remain muted unless you're recognized to speak. Thank you all for joining us this evening. As the board has moved to in-person meetings for our regular and special full board meetings, please note that committee meetings of the RTD Board of Directors will still be held remotely via Zoom and will be audio and video recorded. The meeting recordings, along with the unofficial minutes of the meetings, will be posted as soon as practicable on the board's website. At this evening's meeting, we are providing communication access real-time translation, also known as CART. Anyone who would like to access this service should send an email, please, to the RTD Board Office at rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com, and a link will be provided to you. A live stream of this meeting is also available via RTD's YouTube page. I will now call the roll. Director Bouquet.
Present.
Director Broom.
Present.
Director Busick.
Here.
Director Catlin.
Here.
Director Davidson.
Here.
Director Deschel. I think he will be here. I am Lynn Geisinger. I am here. Director Guzman.
Present.
Director Harwick.
Here.
Director Rosenthal. Director Rusha.
Present.
Director Sloan. Here. Director Tisdale.
Present.
Director Whitmore.
Present.
And Director Williams.
Good evening, I am here.
With 14 present and 1 absent, we have a quorum. Next is our public participation period, which is open to anyone who would like to address the board. As we have both in-person and remote attendees, in-person comments will go first, followed by those who are participating remotely. For those attending in person, please come up to the podium when your name is called. If you have not already signed up to speak and would like to do so, please approach the podium when I call for any additional speakers. For those attending virtually, if you wish to speak and have not already done so, please raise your virtual hand or press *9 on your phone. Staff will unmute you when it is your turn to speak. If you're dialed in, please press *6 to toggle your mute settings. I will go through the rest of this when I hear. Do we have speakers in the queue? Anyone present or anyone online or on phone?
We do, Chair Geisinger, this is Jack Kroll, manager of the board office. We do have one individual who has raised their hand, Mr. Dawood Taylor.
Okay, then I will finish going through this. If any speaker has documentation or reference materials, or if any member of the public would like to submit written comments, you can email those to the board office at rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com. Just as a reminder, during this time, the board will not offer any direct comments or responses. However, if you would like to have some response and be contacted, you can email the board office again at rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com. Speakers, begin your remarks by stating your name, please, and you'll have up to 3 minutes to provide comments. Mr. Taylor, if you're on the phone or online, would you please go ahead, state your name, and you may proceed.
Mr. Taylor, I see that you've unmuted yourself, but we are not able to hear you at this time.
He's disconnected? Sounds like he's not connected to audio.
It looks like he's connected on our end, and then he disconnected and reconnected, but still nothing.
Are you able to hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right, so to introduce myself, my name is Dawood Abib Taylor L. I submitted a document to the board office late last year, November the 17th, I believe it was. And I wanted to see if the board had a comment on the record for the record to an employee relocating to California and working when previously the remote work policy had a 300-mile radius.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. We don't comment to public comment, and I don't think we would be prepared to comment on that at any rate tonight, but you can certainly email the RTD board, the RTD board office with the email address that I had given, which was rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com, and request a response or some communication if you'd like.
I have done that as well. I just wanted to know if you had any comment on the record for the record.
Okay, not tonight, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, anybody else in public participation?
Chair Geisinger, we do not have anyone at this time. We did receive 2 emails prior to the meeting, and those have been forwarded to you all. One is from Sid Park, and one is from Matri Lazaroff, and those have been sent out to the full board.
Thank you very much. All right, with no other participants in the queue, we will close public participation at this time. Now, our next item on the agenda is other matters, and I have one other matter. Before we move on to the election of officers, I want to take a moment to celebrate the system-wide lowering of our fares that took effect on January 1st, and in particular, our Zero Fare for Youth program. The historic moment that we're at RTD is really a first of its kind achievement for our agency when we have both lowered fares for the first time ever, and an unusual statement for any transit agency, I believe, and we were able to put into place our Zero Fare for Youth year-long pilot program. These efforts represent innovative ways for RTD to drive ridership on our system and expose a new generation of kids to the many benefits of public transit. Specifically tonight, I want to recognize the work of 2 people who made this, who really drove this action and made it work, and that's Director Kate Williams and our GM CEO, Deborah Johnson. Our Zero Fare for Youth pilot program would not have happened without their years-long effort to champion transit for our region's youth. And the story, as I understand it, is in 2020, there was a gathering of elected officials that Amanda Sawyer had put together, and Ms. Sawyer, who is a member of the Denver City Council, has joined us tonight. Thank you for coming, and thank you for your work on this project as well. And members of the school board were there, members of City Council, and Director Williams was there. And out of that, the conversation started about how to make it easy to get kids to school. And as I understand it, there were several options looked at: passes, using the DPS identification, those sorts of things. Director Williams took this on as her mission, along with the help from Ms. Sawyer and others, and began speaking to various groups about the importance of this approach, and ultimately got a proclamation, I believe, from the school board and from the city. And then when Ms. Johnson and her staff started the 18-month Fair and Equity Study, the Fair Study and Equity Analysis, to be correct, we heard many requests for zero fares for youth. You know, we already had a 70% discount, and the argument was, let's just make this free. Let's make it easy. Ms. Johnson took this question to the FTA and was able to get a waiver from the 6-month limit on a fare demonstration program to run the youth pilot program for a year. And we started it when our zero fare months of July and August ended. So September 1st was the beginning of our year-long pilot. I'm happy to say funding for this program to be continued and expanded to all transit agencies statewide is in the governor's budget this year. So kudos, I would say. Bravo, bravo, Director Williams, bravo, Ms. Johnson. I think this was a great win for the agency. We have a little framed article for you both, which I will give you in a minute, but I thought I'd give you both a chance to say a few words. Ms. Johnson, would you like to go?
Well, good evening, everyone. Deborah Johnson, General Manager and Chief Executive Officer, Regional Transportation District. Madam Chair, thank you very kindly for your comments. I just want to reflect and say, while I appreciate this tremendously, this is who I am and what I do. Coming into this organization, when I basically did a listening tour with several of you, some of you weren't here at that time, I wanted to garner a better understanding of pain points for our customers. And I can recall vividly having a conversation with Director Williams where she talked about the need for seamless access for individuals that were matriculating in secondary schools. And I shared with her, having come from an area where I had some great success in leveraging programs such as this, keeping in mind that public education, in order to take advantage of that, you have to have access, and public transportation and public education go hand in hand because it's a win-win for everybody as we're cultivating a new generation of transit customers, but more importantly, we're providing opportunities that others may not have an advantage to take. So with that as a backdrop, I just want to say I appreciate the partnership of the board, but more specifically Director Williams, because I can recall meeting with the interim superintendent when I first came here, just talking about the collaborative efforts we could undertake. And then Dr. Morero came on board and coordinating with Councilmember Sawyer and members of the Denver Public Schools. And there were some stalwarts on that board that really pushed the envelope. So I'll yield the floor to Director Williams and say thank you. I'm very humbled, but recognizing that we are people in the people business. This is just who we are and what we do, and I'm glad to be a part of it. And I'm even more excited to see that people have heard our call for investment in our future generations here in the state of Colorado, because that'll make all the difference in the world when we're talking about moving people to and fro and limiting the barriers to entry for opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Williams, you have the floor.
I want to thank everybody here for being a part of making this happen. Councilwoman Sawyer really, really held this as a court where a bunch of public officials, we started in 2020, we talked about it over and over and over again. We talked to all kinds of other people, but I feel like Deborah Johnson really carried the football across the finish line by going to the FTA and getting it approved. And we just want to see the future of transit and the future of our kids go hand in hand, because transportation underlies everything. Many, many people have heard me say this, that a food bank is no good if you can't get there. A clinic is no good if you can't get there. And public education, which is free, is no good if you can't get there. So we're just all really, really thrilled that this has gone on, and I hope that it will go national and be permanent. And thank you all for the help that you all gave all of us.
Thank you both. Very talented board office. I know I'm away from my microphone. Has created a framed. You're upside down. And we have a photographer here. If we can get a picture.
Yeah, why don't we just step over here real quick and we'll get our. Deborah, the GMC goes down.
I would be happy to, but this is your work and Deborah's work, not mine.
Got a little Wolverine over here. All right. Great. Item 5 on our agenda is the election of 2024 board officers. As stated in the board bylaws, in the first official meeting of the year, the board will elect the executive committee officers, which are our chair, first vice chair, second vice chair, treasurer, and secretary. You have all received a memo defining the process by which we will elect our executive committee officers for 2024. We will begin with the position of chair and we'll work our way through this process for all of the executive committee offices. Those board members who nominate candidates, those seconding nominations, with if any, and seconds aren't required, and any other speakers will have up to 3 minutes to speak regarding the candidates for each position. For each office, I will ask for nominations. When there are no additional nominations, the nomination phase will close and a call will be made for a vote utilizing paper ballots that Mr. Kroll will distribute and later collect.
Excuse me, Chair. Can we recognize the addition of Director Deschel and
Oh, of
company?
course. Thank you. Director Deschel and Micah have joined us. Welcome. One in a little bit. That's right. That's right. All right, nobody is participating remotely at this point. After the paper ballots are collected, General Counsel Melanie Snyder, in coordination with 2 directors chosen by me, who are not candidates for the office in questions, will serve as co-election monitors. General Counsel Snyder and the chosen directors will tally the votes, and then General Counsel Snyder will announce the name of the director who received at least 8 votes. If no candidate for a given office receives at least 8 votes, we will repeat the voting process. If we proceed into additional rounds of voting, board members who wish to speak further on behalf of a candidate by providing new or additional information may do so at that time. This will be done in a round-robin fashion. Again, each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. If only one director is nominated for a given office, the board may proceed to approve the nominee by acclamation rather than using the voting system I just described. Are there any objections or questions regarding this process? No. Okay. Great. Seeing no further questions, we'll proceed to nominations for chair. I have a nomination. Are there other nominations for chair? Okay. I am nominating Director Eric Davidson.
Second.
Thank you. And just to tell you, I think we all know Eric pretty well, but the reasons for my nomination and just some of Eric's work, I don't think people always see how much work he has done behind the scenes. And working with Director Catlin and Director Deschel and our CFO and CEO and others, Eric has worked hard to put together the ad hoc audit committee to overhaul the internal audit function at RTD and form the now standing RTD audit committee. And if you haven't participated in those meetings, they are doing some very, very high quality work. He's chaired and vice chaired the finance and planning committee. He's chaired the performance committee and he worked to make improvements to the performance evaluation framework, work that's ongoing and seems to be showing really good signs of progress. He's responded with action after we talked about the need in our retreat for revenue diversification, and he worked with Mr. McLeod and others to put together the revenue diversification working group, which is a staff group that's researching our options and issues and Eric is bringing reports back to us on a regular basis. He's attended all board meetings and committee meetings to which he's been assigned, and I have had the opportunity recently to see him up close working with legislators and other elected officials, and I think he would do an excellent job representing us to the world. So I am putting Eric Davidson's name in as a nominee for chair. All right, let's see. Any other candidates? Any other nominations? All right, with only one candidate nominated, we will choose Director Davidson by acclamation unless there's any other word to be said. All right, congratulations. Yeah. All right, 1 second, I just,
No muttering from the peanut gallery.
all right. At this time, we'll proceed to nominations for first vice chair. Are there any nominations for first vice chair?
I have a nomination I would like to make.
Great.
I would like to nominate Director Peggy Catlin, who continues to be an invaluable member of this team on our board and this team at RTD. She brought to us very strong experience and valuable experience, not many things, but certainly notably having served as the Deputy Director of the Colorado Department of Transportation. Also, Director Catlin is a licensed professional engineer. So of course, she is rooted in pragmatic thinking and is realistic and grounded. Much appreciate that background. She has served this board very well. She served on our search committee, and she helped us find our current general manager and CEO, Deborah Johnson. And we have seen great successes over the last few years, thanks to the efforts that search committee undertook. Also, her leadership, persistence, and experience helped drive this agency towards improving its audit function. This took a lot of persistent reminders and it took a lot of doing. And Director Catlin collaborated very closely with many members of our staff as well as members of this board to ensure that work got done. And as Chair Geisinger had noted, I believe that the work is going very well with the audit committee. Given her service, given that she always shows up as passionate, as respectful, and as collaborative, I nominate her for the first vice chair. Thank you.
Second.
Okay. I hear a nomination and a second for Director Catlin, and I believe you meant as former Chair Geisinger said. Are there any other nominations? Okay, at this time, we will declare by acclamation that Director Catlin is first vice chair Catlin is first vice chair Catlin. Okay, and at this time, we will take nominations for second vice chair. Are there any nominations?
I have a nomination,
Okay,
and I am really looking forward to 2024 with our new chair and our first vice chair. I would like to add the name of Director Geisinger to be our second vice chair. We all know she's done extraordinary service to the agency and has developed respect throughout the region for her diligence, intelligence, and experience. And for that reason, and all the information we all have, because we've seen Director Geisinger in action for an entire year, I would nominate Director Geisinger for second vice chair.
Second.
thank you very much. Okay, are there any other nominations? Okay, you want to take this one over?
Sure, given that you are the candidate. With no other nominations, we'll vote by proclamation or acclamation that I have to get used to that, Director Geisinger will be second vice chair.
Okay, two more. We have next the position of treasurer. Are there nominations for treasurer?
I'm going to nominate myself, actually, for treasurer.
Second.
I'm happy to do a little bragging on myself, but I'm going on my 4th year of the board. I'm very excited to want to serve for the executive committee. Really happy about the work that we've done ultimately, especially with our zero emission vehicle ad hoc committee. Really happy about the work that we did with that, and happy with my work that I've done on the operating and safety committee. So that's where I back that up.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to speak for a moment about
Great.
Director Bouquet's work. He is diligent in showing up whenever he is needed. He brings a fresh outlook that sometimes we are lacking and presents it concisely and is willing to work on another viewpoint. That has been my favorite part about working with him, is that he is open to compromise and willing to make that happen. So I'm happy to see him in a role in our executive committee.
Thank you, Director Williams and Director Bouquet. At this time, are there any other nominations for treasurer? Okay, again, by acclamation, we have elected Director Bouquet as treasurer. Next position is secretary. Do we have any nominations for secretary?
I have a nomination for Director Guzman, or Dr. Guzman in my mind.
He just got a new degree, huh?
He did, right? You know, like, what can I say? He's just great. Dr. Guzman is great. He's smart, he's insightful, he brings a unique perspective to the board, to everything that he works on. He has a critical eye that I think sometimes maybe frustrates some people, but I think like it is so great to have that on the board, and I think that he would be so well suited for that. And let's be real, the guy takes more notes than anybody else. So while he doesn't need to do that in this role per se, he does it better than anybody else, and he also does it while listening to his non-native tongue and then writes his notes in. So I know that's not mandatory for this, but I think he'd be great at it. So he's got my nomination.
Thank you.
Second.
Oh, I was going to second.
Go ahead and second, both of you.
Can I make a brief statement?
Of
too?
course.
2 words that come to mind about Director Guzman are his passion. Everything he does, everything he says is with passion. Nothing is dull, nothing is without passion. And also what I appreciate most about him is he's grounded in his community and in his district, in the comunidad, you know, and I think that's really important to have a director. I think if I can say probably of all of us, you're probably the most grounded in the community. So I really appreciate that about you, and I look forward to supporting you.
Great. Are there any other nominations for secretary? All right, by acclamation, Director Guzman, you are now the secretary. All right, congratulations to the 2024 Executive Committee. Chair will be Chair Davidson, First Vice Chair Catlin, Second Vice Chair Geisinger, Treasurer Bouquet, and Secretary Guzman. And I will now turn over the duties of chair to our newly elected chair to complete the meeting. I'll even give you the gavel for later. All right.
Thank you, Second Vice Chair Geisinger. Thank you, everybody. Truly, look forward to a great year together. Another good year, certainly many challenges ahead, but I have no doubt it will be exciting. All right, we have one recommended action on the agenda this evening. It is listed as item 6, action A. That item is for the 2024 RTD Board of Directors meeting posting location. This is for the Board of Directors to designate the board meeting portal on the RTD public website at http://rtd.iqm2.com. as its official location for posting of notices of all public meetings in 2024 as required by sections 24-6-402 2C1 and 3 CRS. Do we have a motion? I have the mover as Director Tisdale, the second as Director Whitmore. Are there any no votes on this action? Seeing none, the motion will pass with all 15 directors present. Moving on to our discussion items, we have one discussion item on the agenda this evening. And this is with regards to the General Manager and CEO Performance Assessment Framework. There is some information in your board packet, both on packet page 5 as well as the presentation to follow that will be provided here. I actually will be presenting this discussion item and then opening up for questions and discussion from the directors here. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start us off. But before I do, I would very much like to thank our Chief People Officer, Charlene Pelegi, who worked extensively with this board, certainly collaborating with the Performance Committee and working directly with myself as well to help prepare a performance evaluation framework that we'll be looking at this evening. As was noted in the packet, at the February 15th, 2023 Performance Committee meeting, so going back a little ways here, there was consensus from the committee that there was a pretty strong opportunity to improve the performance evaluation process or performance assessment of our general manager and CEO, as well as the agency performance. Our current contract with our current general manager and CEO, we annually adopt weighted success outcomes, organizational values, and/or goals, and the distribution between base salary and incentive compensation. However, the discussion item this evening is intended to focus generally on an evaluation framework for any general manager and CEO who may be in the role. So I would just ask directors, as we consider this item and as we discuss, to please restrict questions and discussion to the framework itself and its general application to the performance assessment of a general manager and CEO, and not to address any specific contract terms at this time with our current serving general manager and CEO, Deborah Johnson. With that, I'll move into the slides. So Mr. Kroll, if you wouldn't mind advancing the slide. So I'd just like to orient everyone to this slide and to this framework. There's a lot here. There's a lot of moving parts, but also this is a simplification of what of how we might approach things versus I think where we have historically been. So I'm actually going to go from the bottoms up as what's on this slide. And ultimately what you're seeing are categories or areas on which this board would judge the agency and also judge the performance of a general manager and CEO. And at that bottom level in the yellow box is the agency performance metrics. And at this level, the way we can think about this is what we as directors are ultimately held accountable to. These metrics that we would measure here should align with what our constituents and our customers and stakeholders are asking this board to do. Thus far, we have applied some agency-wide metrics within the confines of our strategic plan and have largely been measuring Net Promoter Score in a couple of different areas. And as we've discussed as a board and in the Performance Committee, there's an opportunity to enhance some of these metrics. So I'd just like to highlight what that is and then move on, and then we'll kind of break it down and talk about each and have a dialogue among us. What then going up a level is we get to the red box, the short-term goals. And those short-term goals can be thought of as annual goals. Whereas what's in the yellow box would be multi-year plans. What are we measuring and what are we reporting out to the public as to how the agency is performing? The red box would be looking at an annual basis of what our general manager and CEO is doing and how he, she, they are directing the staff to accomplish our long-term goals. Those short-term goals should be measurable and can fit into a variety of different frameworks whereby we can have measurable goals on an annual basis. Historically, in our current contract, and I know I mentioned we'll limit our conversation today to the framework itself, These have been what we have called objective criteria or objective measurements. Moving up, we go into more of what we have thus far termed the subjective criteria. And this gets to the blue boxes up at the top left and the top right. Starting from the top left, these are the agency values. And as noted here, and I certainly credit our Chief People Officer for putting some nice distilling phrases in here. This is how the general manager and CEO shows up. This is how he, she, they perform their job against our organizational values. Are we accomplishing our goals? Are we moving metrics? But are we doing so in a way that honors the spirit of what we value from an organizational standpoint? This has historically been a subjective criteria that the board has weighed in on and filled out surveys for at least the past couple years. But I believe that if we adopt a framework like this or consider a framework like this, there's an opportunity to really improve and bring some maturity to those measurements. I think many of us have heard the concept floated over the last year that we might introduce a 360 review. A 360 review being where a general manager and CEO's peers, those reporting up into the general manager and CEO, in and outside the agency, and those above at the board level can weigh in and measure performance in such an evaluation. I think that could be one thing that we would consider here. Similarly, moving over to the top right is also a subjective measurement that could be subject to something like a 360 review. And this is the core-based job performance. This is really looking at the job description that this board had put out for a general manager and CEO and measuring the strategy, execution, and leadership on that day-to-day basis of how the general manager is performing duties. Ultimately, what this does then is create a framework where we as a board agree on multi-year basis what we're going to measure for performance at that yellow bottom agency performance metrics level. This allows us to dialogue with our community and with the agency itself, and represents an area where a performance committee could have very regular check-ins, perhaps quarterly check-ins on looking at where are things moving, but recognizing that these metrics will take a long time to move and they may even wobble along the way. Whereas the red would, every year we would be adopting, what do we think this year's problems are that need to be addressed that feed into those long-term goals? I think many of us are aware of a lot of the problems facing us this year. Those would be what would inform us in creating those red goals. And then those blue, we can look outside if we have a framework like this and ensure that we are getting input, not just from the board, certainly that will be important, but a whole 360 view of how everybody believes our general manager and CEO is honoring or not honoring the agency values and delivering on the core base job function that we had put forward. So ultimately, moving to the next slide, and then I'll wrap and open for questions and discussion. Where we really are focused right now is the red and the blue in terms of the work that the performance committee has needed to tackle and work on. I personally believe in this presentation and wanted to share my view that we have work to do on those yellow agency performance metrics. While we have adopted some in measuring Net Promoter Score, I think there's an opportunity to go further, go broader, and do things that allow us to really drive our budgeting process, drive how we communicate with constituents. I would propose that we tackle a discussion along those lines at our upcoming retreat. At this time, I want to look at the short-term goals and the agency values and core-based job function. I believe, as is indicated here, and I am appreciative and want to give credit to our Chief People Officer for helping share some best practices, given her certifications in executive pay, that the blue and red boxes would actually drive the movement within a salary band. If an agency adopts a band for a position, as we have done, how the general manager and CEO would move or get raises within that band would be contingent on delivering the blue and the red boxes and delivering on those. Historically, and I know we've got a lot of different things here, we've looked at things like one-time incentive payments, adjusted base salaries, a whole variety of things. Really, this is where base salary adjustments would happen. And this board last year adopted a compensation philosophy that stated very, very clearly, our intent is to pay for performance. And so given that we intend to pay for performance, the movement and increases within a salary band that we adopt should be driven by that annual performance. The long-term agency metrics, which I believe we need to work on at our upcoming retreat, might inform alternative compensation metrics we might look at in the future to really look at how we want to compensate for long-term delivery of what this board seeks to accomplish. So with that, I would like to just conclude my remarks. I will open up for discussion, questions, really had wanted to present this. The Performance Committee is going to need to quickly continue this work as we do have some specific goals that need to be accomplished in the short term. So just as a reminder, we're looking at the framework very generally. I'd love to take any questions or discussion, and certainly I am happy to answer anything here regarding the framework itself. Thank you. Director Williams.
I'd like us to be sure that we look at the performance reports that we had on previous people in this position and what our complaints were with those forms. I think that it would be a shame to reinvent the wheel without looking at some of the things that we did fix from past GM CEOs.
Thank you, Director Williams. I think that's a great point and duly noted as something the Performance Committee should add to its consideration as we look at this framework. Other questions, discussion, comments? Yeah, Director Ruscia, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Oh, that was fun. Congratulations. So I just, I had a clarifying question on the agency performance metrics. Did I understand you correctly in that right now, when we talk about that, we're essentially talking about our strategic plan? And if I could just a follow-up comment, our current strategic plan actually has a lot of goals written into it. I think, and some of them have been mentioned over the last year. And so I just wanted to get an understanding. Are we talking about looking at the strategic plan and some of those goals and maybe tying that to because some of them are short term into this process? And if you just could take a minute to address how those two relate, or if you think that we need to, make updates to our strategic plan, that would be helpful for me.
Yeah, thank you, Director Ruscia. I think it's a great question. I think this strategic plan really runs throughout the entire pillar here of what we would evaluate, which would be the agency performance metrics, as well as the short-term goals, as well as the agency values and core-based job function. I guess starting from the bottom, I think, yeah, that's the center of truth for agency metrics would be driven by the strategic plan. And I think it's contingent upon this board to have an open discussion and look at what we would want to be measuring. I think there's the strategic plan and the strategic priorities that we set. And then there's the outcomes that we're measuring to look at how we're delivering against those priorities. And I think as we kind of go up every level, things are likely to get more and more flexible and require more need for change. I think our strategic priorities, certainly at least in my opinion, are very solid. I think it's something that, always this board has the ability to revisit, especially in partnership with our staff. But I think we can consider those, very foundational. The metrics on top of those that we measure, I think that can be a little bit more something that we look at after a couple of years and say, is this measuring what we really truly want to measure and communicate out? That's more where I think we want to have a dialogue. And then to your point, Director Ruscia, I think it's a great point that our strategic plan we adopted did include a variety of short-term goals, as well as we got more and more tactical in there were a variety of tactics that really formed work plans that the general manager and CEO is using to drive the day-to-day. I think that's where we see the most flexibility, the most change. And already I know many things have changed within staff. And that's where I think we need to do the work to make sure we're looking back at that, understanding what we said we were going to accomplish, and then saying, okay, what worked, what didn't work, and how do we want to tweak what's in red And then that gives our general manager and CEO the opportunity to actualize and work on that strategic plan. So I think to answer your question, yes, I think the whole thing is rooted in the strategic plan. I think that's the most firm and movable foundation. And then as we go up each layer, they get just a little bit more frequent and likely that we need to tweak and adjust those. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That as an individual board member, I feel good in hearing that. I do agree that our strategic plan has a really strong foundation. And I just think it would benefit the board if we just spoke more to that in our work, through our committees and through our dialogue. I also just wanted to offer, and I don't know if it is for this or for performance, but I just wanted to note, currently when we do an evaluation, and I know it's supposed to be a framework, so I'm keeping this as a framework. Right now we have a pass or fail system, and I don't think that's fair or appropriate. So I just wanted to say on the record that I think we should strongly consider going back to a scale. And so I hope that was the right time to say that, but I did want to just to offer that feedback. I think it'd be more fair for whomever our GM CEO is.
Yeah, thank you, Director Ruscha. I think that's an awesome point, all good points. And, especially as we consider even those measurable short-term, the goals in red, when we consider performance evaluation and performance pay criteria for general managers and CEOs, if we're doing our job, it should be hard. We should have to perform, we should have to move, and therefore, we wouldn't want to be binary. We did it all or we didn't do it. I think there's an opportunity to create, even within here, sliding scales when we get to the point that we're discussing compensation. So thank you for those comments. Director Deschel, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and I'll keep my comments brief. This is really great work. I think another thing that I'm certainly being mindful of is, this is a big, as we've all learned, organization, and sometimes you inherit things you didn't create. Sometimes you create things you don't want to inherit, and sometimes you create things that you think you'd want other people to inherit, and it turns out didn't go so well. And we have continued to tweak and refine goals, right? And when you're planning against short-term and long-term goals, we're moving the goalposts a lot. And I think as we're thinking about current employee retention, long-term employee retention, when people are evaluating a place to call home for a long period of time, which is what you need in a leader who's moving something of this size and nature, we should be really mindful of when we're creating to create, and making sure that is in service of not creating a workplace in which someone is always having to readjust their framework on an ongoing basis. I'm not saying that's necessarily what's happening here. I think we had a pseudo plan in place and executed against it for a certain number of years, but sort of putting on the employee management side of the hat, I think it's really important that we keep in mind, hey, if we're going to adopt something, we got to let someone work against it for a period of time before we keep trying to make those tweaks and changes.
Thank you, Director Deschel. I think incredibly well said. What comes to mind for me, as you said, that we've been adjusting, we've been revisiting, and one of my early mentors in my career had shared with me, always ask yourself a question: is the tool serving you, or are you serving the tool? And I think one easy way to recognize when you start serving the tool is when you're scrambling to try to fit everything into place. And my experience in chairing the performance committee last year and having come into it was that there were a lot of things we're trying to fit into place. And I think we can't really get something perfect right now, but I think we need to, and I think of something you said a while back about audit committee, which is let's start with the end in mind. And I think that's what we're trying to put forward this framework is what's an end in mind that we'd say, this works, this is flexible, and we can speak this language when we say, these are the yellow goals, we shouldn't be changing those a whole lot. These are the red goals, we're looking at them every year and seeing how we're doing. These are the blue goals, this is how our general manager and CEO is showing up. And then all of our contracts, all of the amendments, all of adjustments, all of the work performance committee does starts to anchor to that. So I fully appreciate what you have to say. In fact, I've very much felt like we have made so many little adjustments, and it's suggesting to me that we're serving the tool, not the other way around. Second Vice Chair Geisinger.
Thank you. I wanted to make a similar point that I think we came out of the retreat with a process, and I think, I certainly agree with what you're saying. We have given it some time, but it seemed like we got through the performance review process last year and people weren't happy with our tool. And, Director Davidson and others have worked very hard on this. And I feel like what we all want to get to is a really defined performance review where we have the metrics, we have the process in place. I went back and looked at the state auditor's report in 2010, which had a lot of concern about the way the GM CEO was evaluated, and they talk about the importance of looking overall, like the core base job. What's the strategy, the execution, leadership? I think that shows up in the core base job, and it also shows up in the agency performance metrics, because that's another tool, more maybe an objective tool to really look at the overall work of a CEO. And so looking at that, I feel like we are moving in the direction that we have been encouraged to move. And I think I'm excited about this. I think it looks good.
Thank you very much. Director Rosenthal, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations. So a lot of this discussion is sort of, 20,000, 30,000 foot level, looking down over the whole process, but especially for the public to know that, so many of the pieces that we look at in this framework include things like, how does our CEO engage the public, elected officials at all levels, federal, state, local, including, county commissioners and mayors, the city council members, appointed people in the community, going to so many events, which she does. And so things like that's just one of the metrics that is included, that I would probably say is, at the core base job of what our general manager CEO does. So just so people know that there's so many things that we look at, but this is just one thing that, I particularly find that is so important for our general manager to do.
Thank you very much, Director Rosenthal. Yeah, agreed. Well stated. Other questions, comments, considerations? All right. Sorry.
Sorry, I could not get to my computer fast enough. Thank you. Thank you for the direction on this, and thank you for some food for thought. I do think it's important to look at these different levels and where there's flexibility and where there shouldn't be, where we need to be more stringent to hold accountability and governance on the system. But I would also like to point out that this is not just one-sided, right? Even on your charts, it demonstrates that we are working in unity, a board of directors as well as the GM CEO, and accountability needs to be had on both sides. So we do have an onus in this, and we have skin in the game to make sure that we do this part right. To Second Vice Chair Geisinger's point, people were frustrated with this last year's review. And there was a certain uncomfortability walking into it that built up over the course of the year. So I think getting ahead of it right now and being prepared to have some of these conversations from the beginning of this year is really hopeful, but we will not lose steam on that in Performance Committee. I'm nominating myself for Performance Committee by doing this for continuation purposes only, but also want to make sure that we all together, all of us, are looking at this all year long. We get these amazing reports on a monthly basis at our board meeting about all of the things that the GM CEO is doing, but it doesn't really fit into necessarily that yellow box, right? Those are those higher up boxes that you're talking about, how we're engaging, how the GM CEO is executing in the community and how they're showing up. And so I think that, working with the current GM CEO, but also any future GM CEO, really looking at what they will get done, what they tell us they can get done. We have to hold them accountable for it, but then also how they're showing up in community is really important. So I'm excited to work on this and continue going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer Guzman. I completely agree. And you said something I think very important in the beginning, which is how the board holds itself accountable. And there is that key piece in here. And ultimately, the public should be judging us on our ability to move our agency performance metrics, which is exactly why we have to buy into those as the fiduciaries of the agency. And our job as the board is to ensure that we're setting the right goals at the right time to truly move those. And so I think, Treasurer Guzman, thank you for the comments around board accountability. I think this helps us have a tool for that, helps the public have a tool for that. And, the flip side of the tool not, working for you and you working for the tool, when the tool is working for you, you can start to feel like you show up for work every day. You kind of know what you're going to be doing, and you know there becomes some predictability to it. And I think we'll know it when we see it. And your point about the reports, I think this can help inform our general manager and CEO, what do we want to hear about? And this can help communicate that very clearly. So thank you for your comments. Secretary, my apologies. Duly noted. Dr. Secretary Guzman. Thank you. Much appreciated. Yeah. Thank you for the comments. Other questions, comments? All right. Great. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I think this is some exciting and hard work ahead in Performance Committee, and glad to see in our Executive Committee agenda that was published, plenty of interest, so that's good. So we've concluded our discussion items. We're going to move to our final section here, which is an executive session. In a moment, the board will meet in executive session to discuss personnel matters regarding the general manager and chief executive officer. I would like to append the motion to move into executive session to state that the special board meeting will be deemed adjourned after it adjourns into the executive session. For public transparency, this means that once the board moves into executive session, the main meeting will be adjourned. I will now entertain a motion to move into executive session to discuss the following pursuant to Section 24-6-402 4F1 CRS for consideration of personnel matters regarding the 2024 performance assessment criteria for the current general manager and CEO and potential related amendments to the employer agreement, and pursuant to Section 24-6-402 4B CRS to receive legal advice regarding the same. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I would move approval with the caveat of a 4-minute break before we proceed.
Absolutely.
Go out and make it 5.
5 minutes.
5 minutes. I heard of the movement as Director Whitmore. I think I heard a second from Director Broom. Is that great? Is anyone opposed to the motion? All right, wait for it. For all those who are expected to attend, would you please take a 5-minute break and then return? For everyone else, please vacate the room at this time and take all of your belongings with you. Thank you very much. We'll be back in 5 minutes.